Hello everybody, thank you for joining me. Today in 1519, Leonardo da Vinci died. Leonardo, about whom not much needs to be said in terms of background, but just to relate an anecdote about him, his famous painting of the Last Supper was painted in the chapel of a monastic community in Milan. And it seemed to be taking him an awfully long time. One of the issues was the faces that he was to put on the disciples. Were they going to be like people who were real members of the monastery or not? And if so, which one was to be Judas? But that wasn't the real reason it took him a long time. It took him a long time because he used to often sit in the chapel, not apparently doing anything. And the monks, who, particularly the abbot, who was getting very frustrated with the length of time and therefore the cost that was mounting up of this picture, accused him of wasting time, just sitting there doing nothing. And he said in reply, "I'm not doing nothing. The longer I pause, the more telling are my brush strokes." What he was doing was just being still in order to allow the creative spirit to engage with him and to receive inspiration. And I think it's commonplace these days to say how important it is to take things slowly and occasionally just to stop and be mindful of where you are and what you're doing. It does help to be more efficient, even though sometimes it seems as that might mean that things take longer. Generally speaking, if it does take a wee bit longer, they emerge better. But I particularly was interested in this anecdote because of what it implies about the reason why Leonardo wanted to stop. And it was in order to allow the creative juices to flow. And I think when we're doing something creative, in the broadest sense, something artistic may be, but being creative in the way we do things at work or behave in the relationships that we have, if we're doing anything creative, it pays to stop, not just because it enables us just to establish ourselves and ground ourselves and not get panicky and in a big rush, but because it acknowledges that creativity somehow comes from somewhere else, and it is an extraordinary thing. I think most of us would have experienced going to sleep with a problem and waking up with the solution. There's a very long pause when we allow our minds and our hearts to do its work unhindered by our pushing. And I think sometimes we can do that much more briefly, just by stopping to recognise that actually if we just allow the creative impulses to flow, things will happen almost in spite of ourselves and enable us to be more creative and more efficient people.